Today I'm joined by an inspiring community leader, Shakita Malloy, founder of Another Chance House of Refuge. We'll be talking about overcoming adversity, healing from trauma, and turning pain into purpose through service, leadership, and faith. Welcome to the show, Shakita. How are you? It's
I'm
you.
well, I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I just felt the need to interview you after we had our first couple of encounters. I wanted to know what drove your mission. I could have found myself in a situation as the other people that you're helping. So that's why I wanted to interview you.
Well, thank you. I'm honored. I'm humble. My life, I can honestly say that my life had all of my life trainings, all of my life experiences, prepared me for where I'm at now in my life and the work that I do and the lives that I get to impact and change. But it literally it started from just the humble beginnings. Being raised with my mother and my great grandmother. They instilled hard work, leadership, drive, and determination, and don't give up. And so I always saw them work hard. I always saw them help people. And it kind of is just, I guess it rubbed off on me.
In a good way,
And
too.
then it did. I got out in the world and I bumped my head quite a few times. And so it was from bumping my head and getting back on the right track of knowing what works and what does not work. That prepared me for where I'm at now and to be able to meet the individuals and families that I come across. I'm able to meet them where they are.
Shakita,
Uh,
what adversities actually did you experience that drove you on this mission?
it's an adversity that many people experience, believe it or not. And it's a fatherless home. It's not having a father present. That we find ourselves in situations looking for that masculine feel or that balance of the yin and the yang of masculine and feminine. And so for me, I had a stepfather that was around. He was around, but he wasn't necessarily giving me what a daughter needed from her father. And so I went out in the world looking for that father and making many mistakes, unfortunate decisions. And some of those decisions was being a teen mom at the age of 14, got in many wrong relationships. Some of them were abusive. Yeah. And so the greatest adversity is a fatherless home. A lot of people do not have a father. And if they did have a father that was in the home, he wasn't present. And so having that situation or having that adversity put me out in the world that I was not prepared for. And so moving out in the world without having certain morals instilled into me from a father, again, I made a lot of unfortunate decisions. I don't regret any of my decisions because it made me the woman that I am today. It allows me to meet an individual, man, woman, or child who do not have a father and they're lashing out or they have different behaviors. I can identify with those behaviors because I too had those same behaviors. But that was the adversity. And watching my mother and my mother was more so father, and my great grandmother, not just my grandmother, my great grandmother. My great grandmother was mom. And so I still had that balance, but it just came through two women.
Do you have a relationship with your father now?
Yes, I do.
That's
Yes.
awesome. That's
Yes.
good.
My father was always around and I had a bond with him, but I just did not know that he was my father. Had that internal GPS, right? The genes, the DNA, the chromosomes, all of that is real. And you can't hide from that. You can't mask that. You may not even be able to explain it, but whatever is in the dark will always come to light. Right. And
That's right.
so he was always there, but it wasn't until about 8 years ago, 9 years ago, he came and said that he was my father. I mean, since then, we just continued to build. He was always around. I couldn't explain what that feeling was, but now I know. In my 40s, now I know that feeling that I had for this guy, that was my father the whole time. And so, yeah, he still has his traumas. He's incarcerated. That's the reason, one of the many reasons why I work with individuals coming out of incarceration. It's my history. It's my family. Without saying too much or without not giving enough, I was chosen to be able to work with this population because I experienced this population since I was a little child.
And as I've said in the past, experience is the best teacher.
It
Some
is.
textbooks can't
And
give
then
you the information that life gives you.
I used to sit with my grandmother, my great grandmother, because all of my cousins, the men, right? We came from a humble beginning, Florence, South Carolina. We know in small towns, it's not a lot there, it's not a lot to do. And then you typically find yourself doing things that you don't want to do or you don't supposed to be doing, right? And so my grandmother was mom and my great grandmother. So I spent a lot of my time with my great grandmother. Weekends, days out from school, holidays, I was at my great grandmother's. My great grandmother was born in 1928. She didn't make it past the 3rd grade. And so she could barely read, barely write. I would do the reading. I would do the writing for all the cousins and the uncles that was incarcerated because we came from poverty and, poverty is a disease. And so I used to be the one, we would go to Kmart or we would go to different stores and I would get the cards. She was like, hey, pick a card out for your uncle. Pick a card out for your cousin. And we're going to send it to them. They're in prison, right? They're in jail. They're in prison. And then you couldn't do, everything is digital now, but back then you had to write a money order. At 10 and 11 years old, I was writing money orders to my cousins and my uncles that was incarcerated for my grandmother.
Wow.
And I would put the letters in the mail and I would send them off. And so not knowing that was going to be a part of my story and that was going to be a part of my purpose to be able to bridge the gap and help individuals know and understand that despite where you're at and despite what you've been through, you will overcome as long as you have some type of support and you have the mindset. I watched my mother and my grandmother house people for a living. My mother and my grandmother rented rooms all my life. I had many people coming in and out of our houses. Really, it was family, it was friends, My mom and my grandmother always helped people. And it was
That's
literally
awesome.
about 5 years ago that my brother was like, Keita, you know that you're doing what mama and grandma used to do. And I was like, what? What you mean? And then it just hit me, right? They say the Sankofa bird, right? In African culture, the pebble on its back. You got to be able to peg back to be able to see forward. And so I was able to look back and I was reminded of my back history that prepared me for where I'm at and where I'm going.
That's awesome. I was just about to ask you where you were originally from, and you're from South Carolina. I'm from South Carolina also.
Yes,
So we know how poverty affects the state.
it is. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, about your transitional homes, let's talk about that if you don't mind, because I visited one once or twice.
So my transitional homes, they're healing spaces. Another chance, house of refuge. God gave me that. And I mean, people say second chances, but you get more than a second chance. God give you grace every day. That's another chance. When you
Yes,
open your eyes and you're able to maneuver through this life, regardless if you got a few aches or a few pains or you got a headache, you still able to move, right? That's another chance. You can get a few second chances, but you always got another chance at another day. And so another chance is truly a healing space. It helped me heal. I formed this nonprofit 2 months after my mom passed. And I took that pain and I turned it into purpose. I took that pain and I turned it into power. And they say the greatest way for you to heal is to help someone else. And
yes.
that's what I did. I went out and not knowing what it was going to be. I did not know. I did not have a clue. I had been prayed over, prophesied to all of my life for many, many, many years, but I never ever knew what it would look like. And being here now, just that transitional home, people in transition, they need a safe space that's without judgment. They need a safe space that has the resources and the support that they need that they can thrive. And so I've been fortunate enough to build something great and amazing. And as much as I say it ain't me. I'm just his vessel. I'm just an obedient soul that says yes.
Best experience I've had in Charlotte is when I got to Another Chance House of Refuge, and when I got in this program.
I've been to other places and tried to get help. Really, I don't see another way that I could have gotten help. I want to find my own home. That is the goal. And I feel like the organization will help me find my own home. Also, fix other things in my life, like acquiring my driver's license, starting my own business.
How does that feel when you see an individual go from one point to another?
It's humbling. It's humbling. It really is. It's humbling. It's life changing because regardless of how great you become, you still have troubles, right?
That's
And
right.
so, um, a lot of these families keep me encouraged. A lot of these families, these individuals keep me going. And so, again, it's humbling.
So you have two transitional homes, one for men and then another one for women. Is that true?
I had a women's home. I closed a women's home last year just for restructuring of things, moving things around, preparing kind of sometimes you gotta let things go for more to come. And so that was one of the things that I had to make a hard executive decision to do is let it go. And it allowed me to be able to like the bow and arrow, pull back to be able to shoot further into the future of what God has for me and the people that's assigned to me. And so I did have a women's home. I had it for 3.5 years. No, 4 years. I had it for 4 years, but I closed it June of last year. It's coming up on a year, and it's amazing because I let the women's home go, and then here recently, just a few weeks ago, we moved into a new office space, and it's beautiful. It's an extension of the healing that's in our transitional home. Had a client, I had an intern come in to work with my social worker last week, and my social worker shared with me that the potential intern said that as soon as she walked in the door, she felt a healing.
And so did I. That's why I like attending community events that you host. So how many employees do you have?
Woo. I have about 10.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a director of operations, I have a program director, I have a director of social worker, I have an executive assistant, I have a brand manager, and then I have 2 facility managers, and then I have a couple volunteers that come in and volunteer every single day.
Shakita Malloy is doing big things in Charlotte. How many people are living in your transitional home right now?
12.
How many people have you served? And I know there's many.
Lot. I can't even keep count. I have to look at the numbers. I will say, through that house in the last 6 years, I'm gonna say 220, 120, 220. It's a 10 bedroom, 6 full bath home. And I'm able to put 12 men in that one house comfortably. They're not on top of each other. They're not, everyone has their space and has their own privacy. And that's the fortunate part about it. We're able to support so many at one time.
So let me ask you this. How has God funded this movement?
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about faith first, right? Having that
Yes,
faith as small as a mustard seed, right?
yes.
Having that faith as small as a mustard seed, because when I decided to follow and be obedient and say yes to God, saying, hey, go out in the community and take care of my people, right? I didn't have no money. I had just lost my mom. I had just left the marriage and I had 3 children. And so I'm pretty big at sitting down, meditating, and hearing the voice of God and what direction to go and take. And so this organization started with $350 of my food stamps that I was supposed to be feeding my children. And I took that $350 and I turned that $350 into millions.
Wow.
Our greatest funder is God. Truly.
Yes.
But physically, practically, realistically, we charge individuals to live in our home way below market what the housing market is. And it's a program. I'm not a landlord. It's a rigorous program that if you work the program, you're able to become successful. And so that is our way of generating funds. Additional to generating funds for individuals living in the home, we get grants. So currently right now, my greatest funder is Foundation for the Carolinas. And with our funder for Foundation for the Carolinas, they pay our salaries and they pay rent for 10 families who live in their own home. And so not only do we have the transitional home with 12 men in it, but we have 10 families who live in their own homes that we pay rent for every month.
That's awesome.
Yes, ma'am. So the funding is from God, but practicality it is through them paying the program fees and then an amazing funder like Foundation for the Carolinas. And, we get different grants here and there. But right now, we have one funder, and that is Foundation for the Carolinas.
That's awesome. They're doing great work because I haven't experienced homelessness, but from what I've seen, it looks like it's very challenging. Even where I live, we're seeing more people without a place to live here in South Carolina in Rock Hill, in the city of Rock Hill, and that was almost never heard of. But I see people on a daily basis walking around with no place to live. So you're doing awesome things in the city of Charlotte. Now let's talk about your book, Shakita. I would like to learn more about that. And the book title is Paradise, Maximizing Your Life While Creating a Life of Miracles. Let's talk about that for a moment, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Paradise is snippets of my life. I published it in 2018. It took me 7 years to write it. And it's a small book. I have some more books in me. I just have not had a chance to do it just yet. But yeah, Paradise. I take you through my story. I give you snippets of my story of the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great. And then on the other side of that, I take you through a self-assessment. Give the reader what I gave myself, what God gave me for me to heal. And it was asking myself those hard questions. And it was being honest and real with myself in real time. And so instead of reading self-help books, I became self-help.
That's
And so
awesome.
Paradise is the good, the bad, the ugly, the great snippets of my life. And then on the other side of it, it is taking inventory. You're able to sit down with yourself or a group of people and do a whole study of the books, whatever that looks like. But, it truly is to help you go from minimum to maximum. And that's why I named it Paradise, maximizing your authenticity while creating a life of miracles.
I think that self-reflection, that is very important because we can
Yes.
walk in denial for many years, and that denial can disperse like a bad disease or something.
Yes.
Where we're not sure about who we are. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly because people are going to judge you anyway. I've said that many times. And because of where God has brought me, I have no reason to be ashamed. I have to tell the whole story, not some of it. That's the way I live my life.
That's funny you say that, and what I'm feeling in my spirit to share. And this is something that I do not and I have not really shared with people, but I'm being obedient, I'm listening to the voice of God. In that ugliness of healing, right? In that ugliness of healing, it's ugly. And so there was a book I had read. I went to the library with my children years ago, and a book literally just jumped off the shelf at me. And it was called Spirited by Rebecca Rosen. I remember that book, and I remember that lady. It was a gold book. The book was golden. And I went home with that book, and I sat with that book. And that book, again, it caused me to look at myself. And with me looking at myself, I went through a very dark space. Tried to commit suicide twice. First time took pills. It didn't work. Second time called myself thinking I was going to slit my wrist. I couldn't do it. But it was in that deep healing where I had to sit with that picture. One of the activities was just sit with the picture of your young self. Sit with that little girl and look at that little girl and let that little girl speak to you. And
On
so,
my healing journey, it's funny that you say that because I've been into therapy. I was in therapy for a while, just talking about some very traumatic things that happened in my life. And this last therapist that I was connected to, I dealt with my wounded childhood parts. That's where a lot of traumas come from. And people do not realize that they do not deal with the childhood traumas.
yeah.
For some reason, I think as adults, we want to deal with the now, but you have to go back sometime and do some soul searching and
There you go.
uncover some of those hurtful things that have happened to you so that you can evolve. And that's what that therapist had me do. I went back and I revisited those places because I'm over 50 years old and I know I don't look like it. No, I'm just
At
kidding.
all.
But it was a lot of
At
secrets.
all.
I carried a lot of secrets that I had not dealt with. And it a lot of those dark secrets showed up with me too. But once I dealt with those things, God healed my spirit. And Evelyn the Advocate came forth. And if you don't know my history, you would never know that I had been through some of the traumatic things that I had gone through. But I am so grateful for God's healing. That's what I'm grateful for.
Man.
A lot of us, we need to do that. If we want to, as advocates, we can't tell people what to do, but we can encourage them. Go back to some of those childhood traumas, and you will be surprised at who you really are. But I recommend, from experience, recommend people dealing with childhood traumas. That is the core a lot of times
Yes, it is.
where these behaviors and a lot of decisions, wrong decisions that we make in our lives. Do you agree? Do you agree
I
with that?
totally agree. I totally agree. As a matter of fact, you just gave me an answer to not. I wasn't even looking for the answer. It just came to me. Our next exercise with the people, I'm gonna have everyone bring a picture of their young self, and we're gonna do that. So thank you. Yeah, thank
You
you
are
for that.
very welcome.
Yes, ma'am.
Where's your book available, Shakita?
So Paradise is on all outlets, self-published. And so with self-published through Book Baby. So I have a bookshop page, but also you can go online. You can get it at Amazon, you can get it at Barnes and Noble. So yeah, I am busy.
You sure are. That's awesome, though. It is so amazing
Thank
how
you.
adversity will drive you into your purpose.
Yes, ma'am. That is true. That is true.
All right, Shakita.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
you made my day. You're
Thank
such
you.
an awesome person. When I first encountered you, I think I went online. That's how we connected with one another. God knew what he was doing. I'm looking forward to you having other projects and hosting other things, and I'll be there.
Yes, ma'am. We would love to have you. You know, you bring light to our events and stuff. You do. You do. Thank
Thank you
you for
so
being
much,
you.
Shakita.
Thank you for
And
being you.
keep doing the good works in the community that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you for joining, everyone. We'll see you next time. I'm Dr. Evelyn.